What's up everybody, Raiko here. With the new ban list that just went into effect for the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG metagame, Malicious is now back to 3. And with that, we're gonna be abusing it with Tearlaments before it's put back to 2 as Konami's been doing in perpetuity. Anyway, what we're gonna be doing here today is a deck profile, but before we get into that, thank you all so much for your continuous support. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing as it helps a bunch. If you like this video, go ahead and like it as well. And I want to know in the comments, do you agree with this list? Do you disagree with this list? Are there any suggestions you would mention or that you have that you would add to this list to help make it a little better? Let me know in the comments below. But let's just jump right in. So starting off with the main deck, we have, for the Tearlament monsters, we have 2 Rhino Heart. 2 is fine in this build. You don't really want to see it too often. It's still a great mill, so you don't want to just play 1. Playing 3 can be a bit cloggy as, again, it's very, very searchable in this deck, being able to get Rhino Heart, but being able to mill it is very good as well. We are playing each of the names, so these are definitely the important Tearlament cards, and these are what get you there. Without these 3 girls, this deck would not be anywhere near close as good as this deck is, but it would be really cool if we can maybe get these bumped up one day, but for now, this is fine, and with this build, it's definitely excellent. For the next Tearlament monsters, we have 3 Tear Cash, of course. This card is arguably a better Havness, given the fact that you get to choose when you special summon her. Also, being able to mill 3 on either turn, and then potentially mill 5 if you mill another one of her, is very, very good. I highly recommend her. And as you'll see with the monster we're playing in the extra deck, she's really, really good because she can add herself back with the monster we're playing in the extra deck. Continuing with the Tearlament cards, we have, of course, 3 Planet Perlarino, however you want to pronounce it. This field spell is broken. I genuinely think this deck would be a lot worse if it wasn't for this field spell, but because we have it at 3, we're going to max out on 3. For the next Tearlament cards, we are maxing out on Tearlament Scream. This card is unbelievably good, and given the fact that the millers are sadly gone, we need to be able to mill as much as possible, and this being able to give us mills on either turn is very, very good. And the attack differentiator does come up from time to time. Decreasing your opponent's monsters by 500 is very, very strong, nothing to scoff at, and it does come up quite often, and people often forget about it too. Continuing with the Tearlament cards, and for the last of the Tearlament cards, we have 2 Solic. Solic is just a broken card. Being able to once per turn negate your opponent's cards, also when it's milled, searching any Tearlament's monster, is very, very powerful. We don't want to max out on it as we don't really want it to clog, and there are lots of ways to see this in this deck, and so I don't know. Playing 3 is just a bit too much from my experience, and playing 2 is that perfect number. We're not playing any other Tearlament traps as they can be quite bricky, and if you're going second especially, they're definitely not that good. Maybe if you're going first and you want to focus more on a going first build, sure, but as of now, we want this deck to be as consistent and powerful as possible, and we want it to do a lot of the same thing consistently. So playing the other Tearlament traps, just in my opinion, as someone who's been playing this deck since way before release, it's just not worth it right now. Now moving on to some supplemental engines, we have, of course, the Horus cards. So we've got triple Imseti, 1 Happy, only 1 King Sark. Now, yes, some people may choose to run 2, because if you mill this King Sark, it's definitely not that ideal. However, the reason why we are only sticking with 1 is because we're also playing the field spell. The field spell is extremely good. On the field, it's another Sark, so this is essentially your second copy of Sark, but this is searchable in another way that I'll show soon. This searches Imseti, so this is essentially just another copy of Imseti, and it can put back a card from your hand into the deck, which is really good for unclogging your hand and unbricking your hand. Overall, I really, really like this ratio. I recommend you giving it a try, especially if you're playing the tech card that I'm playing in this build. Overall, as someone who's been playing Tearlaments a lot, this is the perfect ratio. I wouldn't change it at all. For other engines, we are playing a Danger engine. So we are playing the 1 Moth with the triple Nessie. Now, these cards are very, very strong. Yes, Nessie, you don't want to see multiples of Nessie, it's not that good, but having a dark Aqua to make Garura plays or even Kaleido Heart plays with is very, very good. Also, being able to use a danger and get that extra draw. Drawing a card in Tearlaments specifically is so powerful, as one card can do so much. Playing these as essentially pseudo upstarts is very, very strong. Also, being able to pitch any of your Tearlaments cards or anything that you want in grave is also very good. And this always just keeps the game going, keeps it fresh, it puts bodies on the field. Overall, in this build, I really, really enjoy this. I would not minimize this engine. Even post-siding, I try and keep as many of the dangers in as possible. But yeah, the dangers perform excellently, especially in this build. Continue, we have 2 Fenrir. Now, this is one of our going second cards, but it also serves as an engine card. So that's very, very important when building this deck. You not only want cards that are good for going first and second, but you also want it to be engine as well, because in this deck, we want as much gas as possible. Also, something really, really cool about Fenrir is the fact that this searches the engine that you need, but not only that, it can also search you just another copy of itself. So if you just need an extra card to pitch with like Seti, or maybe discard a card or send a card with Sark. Overall, I really, really like this. Playing a third never really comes up, and it can be a bit cloggy. That's why I don't play 3. When building Tearlaments, you really want all of your cards to be really, really good to draw and to mill. If you're playing a card that's only good to draw and not good to mill, or vice versa, you want to make sure it's damn good. And although this isn't really the best mill, it's a phenomenal draw, and at worst, you can still banish it from the hand or grave with Tear Cache to summon Tear Cache. Also, fun fact about Fenrir, this outs a lot of problem cards, such as Colossus, or random floodgates. And although the floodgates are being hit, there are still plenty of floodgates out there. Fenrir, just a solid, versatile card overall, but 2 is definitely the sweet spot. Of course, we've got to play the 2 Ishizu cards that are still legal. We got the Keldo and the Medora. These cards are fantastic. Although they're not good into every single matchup, at worst, being able to recycle back your resources, or just having this as, for example, a quick effect pop on your opponent's turn or on your turn. Overall, these cards are fantastic. Not much to be said about these. Triple DD Crow is very, very good, especially as a quick effect from the grave. Now, for the moment we've all been waiting for. That's right, we've got triple Destiny Hero Malicious. This card being at 3, I don't think a lot of people understand how much it helps Tearlaments, but it really does. The difference between 2 and 3, especially in Tearlaments, is astronomical. This card at 3 makes it so when you're trying to build a board and you're trying to link climb up, or you're trying to make a rank 6, you essentially get to use one of your Mallies as a way to link climb up before using another Mallie to overlay into Beatrice. So for example, you can have, if you mill a Mallie, you can banish a Mallie, special another Mallie, use that Mallie as link material, and then banish it again, and now you got your other Mallie for a level 6. This card makes this deck so much better, and there are a lot of times, especially when you're playing Tearlaments, where you're just missing like 1 or 2 materials, and so having that extra material, again, I can't emphasize this enough, is fantastic. Play this card. It's so good. Even if you draw it, it's not the worst thing in the world, because you can fuse with it, you can pitch it. There are lots of ways to get it into rotation. Overall, I would recommend playing this. I'm not playing the Denier as a quick side note, because Denier is a bit repetitive, because having triple Mallie, you're seeing this enough to where you're not hoping to play a 4th copy, you're not wanting to play a 4th copy, but you're not seeing it. Overall, the Denier is not needed, and the boards you make, you don't need the extra link materials, you just need that 1 extra material. So 3 Mallie, excellent, no need to play the Denier. Moving on to one of the best cards in this deck is Foolish Goods. We are only playing 2 Foolish Goods because, like I said earlier, you want every card to be a good mill and a good draw, and although this is a phenomenal draw, it's a horrible mill. And it's a hard once per turn. So we don't want to max out on it, because drawing multiple copies is never good, and milling these aren't good either. But if you see Foolish Goods, you're definitely in a good spot. Now for the targets we have for Foolish Goods, we of course have the Trivikarma. That's standard, everyone knows this. Search essentially any Tearlament spell or trap. Very, very powerful. But the one card that is definitely the MVP in this deck, and I feel a lot of people sleep on, is the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. And this, of course, is paired with the Turtle. The Turtle is OP. Don't sleep on the Turtle. But Salvation is very, very powerful, especially since we're playing so many outlets to send cards to the graveyard, whether it be Foolish Goods, whether it be the Horus package, pitching cards from our hand. No matter what, it's very, very, very powerful if you can resolve this. And we are playing the Horus field spell as well, as you saw. So this not only equals Planet or full tier combo, this also equals Imseti. So the flexibility of Foolish Goods increases so much more because we're playing Rainbow Bridge. And people may say it's a bit bricky because, oh, what if you mill the tortoise or draw the tortoise? It's not the worst thing in the world. The Horus package, the field spell specifically, allows you to put a card from your hand back onto the bottom of the deck after searching a Horus monster. So you can go ahead and put tortoise back that way. Or it's also an aqua. So you can fuse with it, make a Kaleido Heart, put it back, and then that will reset it for salvation that way. Plus, Tearlaments, you want as much advantage, specifically card advantage, as you can in your hand. So being able to have a Foolish Goods turn into a +1 by sending Bridge and searching a field spell and the tortoise does make a big difference. Sometimes there aren't really monsters, for example, that you want to pitch with Shiren, but being able to search the tortoise to have just as an extra body to pitch with Shiren when doing your plays, and just having it be an aqua to help enable the Kaleido lines, very, very strong. I highly recommend testing this engine. It's very, very powerful. Ever since I've been testing it with Tearlaments with the Rainbow Bridge engine, honestly, there's no going back. It just changes the dynamic of Tearlaments completely. And then for the last 3 cards I'm playing, this is a 41 card list. I am playing triple Dark Ruler No More. Now, this might be a bit weird. This could have been Droplets, and this was originally Droplets. But again, something that I mentioned earlier, you want as much hand advantage as possible, and you never really want to get rid of cards just for no reason. Like, yes, being able to droplet a problematic monster as a chain. So for example, if you're playing a lot of branded at your locals, or if you're going to regional and you're expecting a lot of branded, maybe play Droplet instead of Dark Ruler, as this doesn't stop the puppet lock. But into almost every other board, and especially since people are now making like Thunder Dragon Colossus, there's not really any counterplay to Protoss, especially in Tearlaments. So whether it's Droplet or Dark Ruler, that doesn't matter. But people are building big boards now, and whether it be Voiceless or just anything with just problematic monsters, being able to just have one card to answer the whole board rather than having to spend a bunch of resources from your hand or field to maybe push through a board isn't really ideal. This card, it sucks going first, yeah, but you're fine playing with a 4-card hand in Tearlaments if you're going first anyway. But if you're going second, this card is such a powerhouse, and no one is expecting it game 1 either. So whether it be Voiceless Voice or Thunder Dragon Colossus deck, or even a Snake Eye board, this card is very, very powerful and can enable a lot. I highly recommend testing it, but again, if you're playing against things like Branded or maybe even Centurion, consider Droplet. But for now, I've been testing Dark Ruler and I've been really enjoying Dark Ruler. Something that you may have noticed, we're not playing Protoss or Colossus in this build. I feel like a lot of people for Tearlaments are hovering towards the Protoss and Colossus build with the Nemesis cards, but that just adds so many bricks in this deck, and you want this deck to be as consistent as possible. You don't need the Protoss, you don't need the Colossus. If you set up full combo, if you can just play freely turn 1 and can build a board, you're winning no matter what. You don't need those extra cards, so you don't need to play those bricks. Yes, it's cool that those cards are off for some people. Walking Floodgates are walking floodgates. But overall, I really, really like this build. I recommend testing it out. It's very consistent, very powerful, very good at what it does. So that's the main deck. It's 41 cards, and we're just gonna jump over and look at the extra deck now. For the extra deck, we are playing 4 links. We are playing Sprite Sprint, SP Little Knight, Dark the Dark Charmer, and Appaloosa. Now, Appaloosa is a very, very good card, and it's very good against specific decks, such as like Snake Eyes, for example. Anything that uses Snake Eyes, Appaloosa is very powerful against. It's also pretty easy to make in this deck, especially given now that we're playing full dangers. Also, now that Mali's at 3, having that extra material makes making this a lot easier. The other 3 are pretty standard at this point. SP Little Knight's just a very powerful card. It's a powerful link too. You're ending on this quite often, as well as the Appaloosa. Sprint, it helps you continue your plays. It's very good overall. I would recommend playing it this format. You want your deck to consistently do what it needs to do as much as possible. And then Dark is very, very good because at worst in simplified game states, you can make a Dark, crash it, search Shiren, and then continue your plays. Also, Dark being able to take your opponent's SP Little Knight from the grave does come up from time to time as well. Very, very good. These 4 links are very solid. I wouldn't recommend playing more or playing less. I like that ratio. Going for the fusions, we have 1 Mud Dragon, 1 Garuda, pretty standard, 1 Dangerous with triple Mali. Dangerous is that much better now. 1 Dracostapelia, and 1 Kaleido Heart. These fusions are pretty standard at this point. I wouldn't cut any of these. Some people are playing a Shadal package, but the Shadal cards are just kind of horrible to draw. So again, you want cards that are good to draw and good to mill, and I don't think you need Winda to win games. Yes, Shadal fusion, you can argue with App Clone, but it's not necessary. If you know how to sequence your plays properly and how you play your hand out right, you should be fine with just these 5 fusions. Now, continuing with the XYZs, we have 5 of them. So we have Redoer. Redoer, it comes up from time to time. It never really comes up so often to where it's completely necessary, so you could cut it if you want it, but it comes up enough to where you want it in your extra deck just in case. Also in simplified game states, or if you're playing against like a random stun burn deck or whatever, this card does come up quite often, so I would still recommend playing it. We are playing the Bahamut Toad. This is what I was explaining earlier with how we get back to your cache, because Toad can add back to your cache. Not only is this an Omni Negate that you can make before your 5th summon, but it also gets you a water back, and it's an Aqua to fuse into Kaleido with. Overall, Toad does so much for this deck, and now that we're just kind of in this really wide format where a lot of players are playing different things, I highly recommend playing just another Omni Negate like this. Also with Barone and Savage Band, a lot of people aren't expecting too many Omni Negates, so having an Omni Negate in this deck is very good, and being able to take your opponent's cards with that Omni Negate, I can't emphasize how great this card is. I highly recommend playing these. And then for the last XYZs, we've got a Beatrice, of course. This card is arguably the heart and soul of the deck. There's so much you can do with Beatrice, and now that Malicious is at 3, making her is as easy as ever. And then we've got the Zombie Vampire for the Horus cards, of course, being able to have a rank 8 that mills 4 and special 1 to your field. Very, very powerful. And then we are playing the 1 Typhon. Typhon is arguably a flex spot, but it comes up quite often, especially if you're using a lot of engine to push through a board. Sometimes having that 1 extra push to really push through makes the difference between winning or losing. Overall, I highly recommend playing this lineup. It's been working out really, really well so far, and I'm sure you'd understand too if you test this build. Now moving on to the side deck. Of course, this is going to vary, like what locals you're playing at or what event you're planning on going to, but as of now, because the meta is still kind of undefined, or at least until we start getting some high tournament results in, this is a side deck that I've been enjoying overall, and it just seems to be really good into this wide format. So we've got the 1 Scattershot, of course, it comes up. It's a necessary evil, but it comes up. And then we've got 1 Banshee and 2 Zombie World. One of the hardest matchups for this deck is unironically Fluandereeze, because it's just so, did they draw Shifter, did they not draw Shifter, did you win the dice roll, did you not win the dice roll? And a lot of what this deck does, you just want a card that says no to Fluandereeze to help level the playing field, and if they Shifter you, slapping down a Zombie World, it works quite often, unless they draw, like, let's say like a Feather Duster or a Lightning Storm or a Cosmic Cyclone. If this sticks, you're winning the game, essentially. And now that the format is so wide, a lot of people are going to be going back to comfortable picks too, especially in competitive play, and Flu is definitely one of those picks that people flock to. I'm playing Triple Bestial because we're not playing Droplet. We want something for the branded matchup to stop us from getting puppet locked, so that's why we're playing the Bestials. This is also pretty good into Voiceless, though arguably you don't really need to slide these in because Dark Ruler is just better. But what makes these so good as well is the fact that they're level 6s, so these help you make Beatrice even more so. Overall, I really like siding these for Tearlaments specifically, and yes, although people are siding it for the meta overall, it's very powerful. I highly recommend it. We are also playing 2 Gamma Seal. Now this may be a bit weird, but now that Delicious Memory is back to 2, a lot of people are gonna go back to Pearly. And having something for Pearly is very vital. And it was between this and XYZ Encore, but XYZ Encore doesn't really come up enough to justify it. Plus, it's not the best mill. Again, you want cards that are good to draw and good to mill. And this being an Aqua makes it to where if you mill it, it's not the worst in the world because you could still make Kaleido Heart. You don't want to max out on this because it can be a bit cloggy, but if you ever go against Pearly or Raid Raptor, for example, you're just happy that you have this card. I've been enjoying playing too. Moving on to the spells, we've got 1 Duster and 2 Lightning Storm. There's a lot of stun still, and stun didn't really get hit this last list, and so having like big blowout cards for stun decks is very powerful. Yes, Hugin can technically protect destruction, but a lot of your in-engine can help pick apart the board anyways, so it's not the worst thing in the world. So overall, you want, when you're siding, you want essentially going second 5 engine pieces, or 4 to 5 engine pieces, and 1 or 2 just blowouts. And this is just a phenomenal blowout for just any back row deck, really. These have been performing pretty well. I wouldn't really change these right now. And then we're also playing the 1 Called by the Grave. This is also for branded, so this is like a pseudo 4th Bestial for the puppet lock, but it's also for going first because, again, there's no real counterplay to Shifter. You just kind of have to pray you draw the Called by, or you just kind of pass turn because this deck just folds to Shifter. Nonetheless, this is a very powerful card, and with everyone still running hand traps, I would recommend playing it somewhere in your list. And then for the last 2 cards, we are playing the FTK. These used to be main decked, but it's horrible against Flunderies, and it's really not that good going second. It's only good going first. So when you're signing to go first, you're usually taking out the triple Dark Ruler for these 3. So this will help you protect against hand traps, and this will win you the game, essentially. Yeah, Beatrice is really easy to make now with triple Mally. So you're seeing this quite often, and you're resolving this FTK quite often. Is it annoying? Yes. Is it something that should be in the game? Probably not. But Konami says it's okay, so we're going to continue playing it. And that's the list. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Again, if you have any suggestions or have any feedback as to how to improve this profile, let me know. I'm definitely curious to know what you all think. Nonetheless, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.